You're listening to the Inside Syracuse Basketball podcast presented by Crouse Health, the exclusive healthcare partner of Syracuse Athletics.
Well, welcome back to another edition of the Inside Syracuse Basketball podcast. And today is going to be a learning exercise for a lot of us here, especially me, but it's one I'm really looking forward to because it really involves the topic of basketball analytics as it really relates to running and organizing a college basketball program these days with an eye towards recruiting and development of players and NIL. And to have this discussion, we have not just one, but two guests today. We have Alex Kline, who some of you will remember was on this podcast not too long ago. He's Syracuse basketball program's new general manager. Alex, welcome.
Appreciate it, Mike. Good to be back.
And joining us here on this conversation is a really new, sort of a new member of the basketball program. He's actually been around for 3 years in the role of student manager, but now we'll figure out what to call him in a minute here. But he's really helping the program in terms of some of these sports analytics. Eugene Tulyagijja.
Yeah, pretty close.
All right.
Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Eugene, listen, I'm really excited. We talked a little bit briefly before we started recording here. I'm really excited to delve into you and your background and some of the data that you're providing here for the basketball program. And eventually what we'll do is we'll talk about how you guys, what you're doing is really, you're having to work hand in glove together. And we'll get to that. But, Alex, first of all, why don't you kind of introduce us to Eugene and tell us about some of the stuff that he's been providing for the program?
So Eugene is in a unique student employee, student manager role. He's a one of one at the end of the day. Like, he's an extraordinary talent that it's kind of like that homegrown talent that you got to keep in state, Mike. Or even, you develop him in the minor leagues and you try to get him to the majors and you don't want to lose him. And we're lucky to have him because he has a dual role with us where he's on the court, helping the coaches, helping in player development, helping provide analytics, and really making sure that we are efficient, we are doing things the right way from an on-the-court perspective, but also from a front office and scouting and developing new ideas and strategy standpoint. He's been tremendous and paramount to what we're doing, what I'm trying to do here when it comes to being, cutting edge. So he's really helped us in developing our scouting department and scouting database. He's developed a number of mobile apps to help, provide a lot of this information and relay this information to coaches and donors and different stakeholders, and he's really been helpful when it comes to different presentations and recruiting. So I feel like I'm a jack of all trades. He's like a smarter jack of all trades.
Thanks,
Okay.
Alex.
Alex is laughing at that. Now, I kind of feel like that was kind of like a big picture thing. So, Eugene, I'm going to turn to you, and as we'll introduce folks to you as we go. But so let's do that first. You're about to graduate. You've been here at Syracuse University for just over 3 years, but you're nearing your degree, and your degree is in
Sports analytics.
in the Falk College, right?
Hmm?
That's a really well-known program within the Falk College, sports analytics, and of course that's really two buzzwords in sports these days. How did you come to Syracuse?
So I think I had one of the longest journeys ever, being from Thailand. Then I went to high school in Canada. Then during the school process, when I was like choosing what university to go to, I knew I wanted to get into basketball somehow. I know how. I had this background in coding, computer science, and all that stuff. But then talking to an alumni who works for the Pelicans now, Dom Samanji, I knew coming to Syracuse, being in this program, somehow being a student manager was something I really wanted to do and something like a way for me to break into the sports world. And that's why I chose Syracuse.
Now, you dropped the name there, Dom Samanji, just so Syracuse fans or anybody listening to this understands who Dom is. Dom was a student manager here at Syracuse from like 2018 to 2022. So he's a super young kid as well. He's graduated just 2 years ago. He's currently, I think he's like a data analyst or some sort of analyst or consultant with the New Orleans Pelicans. So in 2 years, he's gone from Syracuse and he's made a few stops in between, including one at the University of Arkansas for a year. But so Dom's at the NBA. How did you get in touch with Dom? How did you two guys end up meeting?
So yeah, when I was doing research for like universities, I wanted to reach out to like alumni and people who were in the program. So obviously Dom posted a bunch of projects on Twitter, on LinkedIn. So I shot him a DM on LinkedIn, and next thing you know, we got to talking, and he got me to Syracuse.
Alex, who knew Dom was also a recruiter?
Great recruiter, really good recruiter. And it's pretty funny when you do think about it. I know a lot of people don't necessarily talk about it. They talk about all the NBA players we've produced at Syracuse, but we've had some really amazing talent come through as managers, and student assistants who have become, agents, NBA coaches, NBA front office executives. So it shows how well-rounded we are.
So Eugene, you come here, you're in the fall college, you're pursuing your degree, you get to be a student manager again through the connection with Dom. But for a couple of years, you're doing manager duties, right? You're getting the Gatorade jugs, the water jugs, towels are out, all that. You're schlepping basically.
Right.
But now, Alex kind of did a little general thing about what you're doing for him. But could you get more specific with what you're doing for the basketball program?
For sure, yeah. I mean, I still wipe the floors, do all that stuff, a part of my duties, but with Alex on the front office side, just helping him with anything like the database we're working on for the coaches, like the mobile app he mentioned. Just when they're out recruiting, they can just have this whole database to see stats, to see each other's notes on each guy, just to have every process internalized for us and making it easier for everyone to be involved and be more organized. So when it comes to recruiting or the portal, we just have everyone's names and everyone's information and data ready to go when it's time for them to make the decision. On the on-court stuff, work a lot with B with all the player development. So just creating analytic reports and just showing them how they can get better at what area they need to focus on, and just working with B on that and creating a plan.
When you're developing the data, these stats or whatever you want to call them, how do you do that? Are you just watching hours of film, or are you going through box scores and shot charts and stuff like that? I mean, walk me through it a little bit.
So we're lucky enough to have a bunch of data sources that we like. Obviously, Synergy we use a lot. So being able to pull data from there and just internalizing it so that all the stats that's shown on their website, the coaches never need to go on to see any of those, and just having my code pretty much just straightly pulled it from there and spit it onto my app that I created for them.
Makes it sound so easy. I'm back in high school, my junior year. I'm at the back of math class, just not knowing what the hell's going on in the front, Alex. So Alex, I turn to you. How specifically do you implement some of the stuff? Like there's got to be certain areas of the game. Let's go like section by section. You're the new general manager. One of the things you're going to help coaches with is portal players, transfers, right? So how in what ways is Eugene able to help you identify guys who might be in the portal?
Well, a big part of that, and we did it at the NBA level, is to start out the year, who are the analytics darlings? And let's get in front of them and watch them and prioritize them and figure out, okay, can they actually play, or does it not translate to our level because of the way they're scoring their points, the way they're grabbing rebounds, the way they, maybe athletically they're not good enough. So I think Eugene can find really good producers and guys that are productive and put up numbers. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for productive players. But does that translate to the high major level? So if we find a guy at, Hawaii that we really like, figuring out, okay, is he good enough for Syracuse? And again, he may end up in the portal. He may not end up in the portal. But I think it's giving our guys a head start So that way, when the portal does open up, it's almost like free agency from an NBA perspective of, hey, we've studied everyone. You have no idea who could end up available or not, but let's be ready.
Yeah.
Eugene, or maybe this is for Alex too. I'll throw this out here. So, do you think maybe Miami was using data when they identified Norshad Omier out of I think it was Central Arkansas 2 years ago, or is this something Tennessee had is in the background check of Dalton Connect coming from Northern Colorado to Tennessee, or were they just looking and they got lucky with their eyeballs?
I can't speak to their process, so I'm not 100% sure what they do. But what we're trying to do is trying to find those talents, trying to find who can be those adult and connect for us in the mid-major level and see if you can project using historic values like why did Dalton connect? Why was he so good there and translate it to Tennessee? And we're trying to recreate that process through our own data analysis, watching film, and any other process that Alex has.
Yeah, it can't be guessing anymore. I think so much of it is guessing and just throwing a bunch of money at those guesses. And now where we come in is trying to be as educated as possible. And I think the numbers really help validate things, as do, the intel that you gather on these players to figure out, hey, are they coachable? Do they work hard? Are they going to fit with your coach and your program? And then just watching them play and kind of knowing, and it'll be tough for me because I have to adjust my lens to, hey, we're looking for Syracuse, not the NBA. But I think it also speaks to, we're going to be selective. We're going to look for the cream of the crop. And that doesn't mean, hey, you're ranked highly or, you have a big name. More or less just, can you play?
You know, um, I was wondering if, in addition to identifying a guy who might be able to make, the conversion, the jump from a mid-major to a Power Five type, Power Four type school as a transfer, does it also maybe help you? This is probably more for Alex, establish a player's worth? Because I asked this question obviously with an eye towards NIL in today's game. Like, everybody might love a certain transfer, but not everybody might agree on how much he's going to be worth in terms of NIL money, right?
Yeah, no, and I think that's the beauty of what Eugene and I are doing, especially during the season, is trying to figure out, who are the players that we could potentially target. Legally speaking, of course, they have to enter the portal. But, if you have a list of 40 point guards that you really, really like, and then you narrow it down for whatever reason to 10 guys. Okay, so now analytically, do they check a box? Academically, do they check a box? Character wise, do they check a box? If all those guys check a box, then it maybe comes down to, hey, we got 5 to 10 options at point guard. These guys want this kind of money, and there's these few guys who want this kind of money. Well, if they're pretty similar in all areas, from academics, analytically, character, player evaluation, well, maybe it makes sense to take the guy who's the better bargain. Like, it just, to me, makes sense. That way, then you can use that extra money on all the other guys on the team. And it's not necessarily, to be cheap, but it's kind of the Moneyball sense of, hey, let's be really fiscally responsible with our resources. And let's, get a player who, again, rather than getting into a bidding war, let's get a player who really wants to be here and is about the right stuff and is just as good as, this guy who's ranked number one according to ESPN in the transfer portal. So that's where, to me, like, you can create advantages for yourself by actually evaluating, by actually following the numbers, by putting it all together. I think it can be really, really helpful. And again, like, we're really lucky to have Eugene. I think his ability as an analytical thinker to know basketball and not just be a robot spitting out numbers and sending me 20 pages of raw data, which I wouldn't understand. Like, it's what makes him one of the more unique basketball minds I've met in the, 15 years I've been doing this.
So, Eugene, let me ask you a question then, not about transfers and recruiting, but can any of the data that you are able to develop, can it help the coaches work with current players? Like either in practice, maybe we know now what to work on, or maybe in game situations. I don't know how many different ways stuff can be applied.
For sure, yeah. I think there's a multitude of ways data can affect stuff on court because I think a good thing with data is because I think the saying is men lie, women lie, numbers don't. So sometimes just so sometimes seeing the numbers that can validate things you see on film, it's a way of communications to the player as well. Just be like, hey, this area of your game could be improved, but like this is how we do it on the court. So in terms of player development, I think that's how we're structuring it. But in terms of on court stuff, numbers and data can help in many ways in game planning too. Whether like let's say a situation when we're down four with 30, 40 seconds left, should we go for a three or a two? What quality of shot and like what shot should we get based on the situation, based on the team we're playing? Who should we foul late game based on the situation? Those are historic data that we can use to determine what we should do in those situations. And I think my job as well is just to provide coaches with all the information so they can make a decision.
I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to oversimplify things. You can make these short answers if you want, okay?
For
So
sure.
is it like Alex Kline? He's our starting small forward. You have numbers that show that from the right corner, he's a 40% three-point shooter. You can show the coaches numbers that show on the other side of the floor. For some reason, he drops to 25%. So now the coaches know, well, for the short term, I want him shooting in the right corner. In the long term, we need to work with him in practice to get better on the other side of the floor.
Yep, that's perfect. I think that's one way, like just looking at a shot chart could help someone.
Now that's pretty simple though, right?
Mhm.
How much more detailed do you get with your stuff?
I think just to go into a little bit of it, it's just for Alex, for example, I've seen him shoot, so I know the numbers. The number could say when he's coming off a screen to the left versus he's coming off a screen to the right on the left or the right side of the floor, what he's doing good, what he's doing better. So that way, when we get onto the court, let's say he shoots better going to his left, we draw up more plays for Alex to go to his left. But then in the back end, we're working with Alex going to the right. And then let's say driving lanes, for example, I heard Alex is not that great of a finisher at the rim based on his numbers. Why
You've been
is that?
wrong.
Is it better? Is it because he's like a right-handed person, a left-handed person, which way he's going, how he can get better? So we look at his strength and try to game plan towards each player's strength and then work on his areas of development to get it to where his strengths are. So then he has no holes in his game. And maybe one day he can get drafted by the Knicks too.
Like there's a reason Coach Autry has me on the bench and not on the court.
Yeah, we all know Alex. What about one area that we haven't touched? We touched on transfers and maybe, helping the coaches utilize players and also develop guys. But what about high school recruiting? It's got to be a little bit harder to develop a good data on a high school kid versus a college transfer, or am I wrong?
Yes and no. I think we're lucky in a day and age now where like Synergy exists and other data provider exists that they start to track like the whole EYBL, all those AU circuits are being tracked. And the longer we do this, the better those datas are getting. And like we have historic data too to see how much each guy is producing at that level and see how that translates to the college level, to the NBA level, and all of that stuff. So being cautious of what data we use and being cautious of historical data and trends that had happened in the past is like a way we can use to help project players, help validate facts that we watch on film too.
Have you always been good with data and code? And at what age did you develop an interest in applying this talent to sports analytics?
So funny story. When I was 8, 9 years old, my mom put me in a bunch of robotics classes. So I was teaching a robot how to like walk in a straight line, move to a left, go to a right. So I had coding skills since I was a pretty young age, I say. But then I grew up with it, did a bunch of more projects around it, and I knew like I loved playing basketball when I was growing up too. And I was like, how do I combine these two things? And I never like figured out that sports analytics was an avenue until 4 years ago. But when I did, I kind of just ran with the ideas. So I started seeing what Dom did with posting on Twitter. So I started working on projects and what he did and just trying to create my own like lane and my own specialty. And it got me somewhere to working with Alex in Syracuse somehow.
Now, okay, so you have all this ability and knowledge with all this stuff, but how did you eventually introduce this to the coaching staff? While you're in the midst of picking up practice jerseys and cleaning locker rooms and all that fun stuff that managers have to do.
So I was working a project just for my Twitter, I think, just on the computer, just waiting to go rebound for a Chris Bell workout. Then I see Coach B in the corner of my eyes, and I remember him saying how he like analytics and all that stuff. So I was like, it's just me and him now. It's the perfect opportunity for me to go present something to him. So I just walked up to him and was like, "Hey, coach, I heard you like analytics. Can I show you some of the player stuff I've worked with before and some of the data I've worked with before?" So we got to talking. I got to presenting like what I've done before, and he goes, "You know what? This is cool. I'm gonna text you something to work on." Then he texted me that later that night. I couldn't sleep, so I just spent all night working on it. Next thing you know, 2 days later, I was presenting that thing to the whole coaching staff.
Coach B, you're referring to Brendan Strawn.
Yep.
So this was probably then, it has to be just this past season because Brendan's only been here just over a year. What did he text you? What did he have you work on that night?
It was a bunch of lineup stuff from last year.
Really?
Hmm.
Just this past season?
This past season, yeah.
Lineup stuff, like which lineups were doing better, which ones were doing worse, or they're more involved?
Just efficiency and then where we ranked in the country based on Ken Palm, all that stuff, and just seeing what lineup is best for what type of situations.
Alex, how can this make Syracuse a better basketball team on the floor the next season or the season thereafter?
I would say better decisions, more options for Coach Autry, more information. And I know more information is not always, you don't want information overload, but I think it just gives us different strategic advantages as a coaching staff. And it provides our players with a lot more insight. That way, when we do, try to explain certain things to them, there's reasoning behind everything that we do and why we're maybe working on this in practice this week or why we're maybe switching up the lineup or whatever it may be. So I think in general, what Eugene does is really going to complement the coaching staff and just give them a lot more ideas. And I think that's the beauty of someone who, again, knows the data, knows the analytics, but also has like a really, really strong understanding of basketball and wants to continue to grow and get better, but also has really good people skills where he can sit down with guys on our team, being a similar age, and have those conversations with them, but also have conversations with our coaching staff and kind of, in an emotionally intelligent way, figure out, okay, here's what the data says, here's what the film says. Let's figure out, how do we improve player X? How do we improve player Y? How do we get the best out of them? And how do we, get the best out of this unit and this rotation? And I just think it provides us with more opportunity to, be the very best team we can be.
Your NBA background, Alex, the last 8 years you were in the NBA with four with the Pelicans, and the most recent 4 years you were with the Knicks. Does your NBA background maybe predispose you to being open to this sort of, using data and analytics in all aspects of a program, not just, maybe some of the simple versions that I talked about where, running a player off a screen or which side of the floor?
Yeah, no, this is common. This has become more mainstream in the last decade or so. But I think data really helps make decisions. It helps validate decisions. And, again, I know people get upset about, oh, the mid range is dead or this or that. But I think when you really study what someone like Eugene does and what he brings to the table and complements, like there are a lot of narratives online. He's ultimately helping us be the best program possible. And again, helping us model what great NBA teams do and what great NBA coaches do. And, I think Coach Autry has a real appreciation for that. And I think that's the beauty of this staff is everyone's very open-minded. They're strong in their convictions. They work hard. They know basketball. They do their part. But I like this group, and I've been here now a month. Like everyone's very open-minded, and that's on the NIL front. That's on the coaching and development front. That's on the scouting front. So we have enjoyable meetings because, look, at the end of the day, Coach Autry, it's his final decision, but everyone has a voice and the ability to kind of weigh their opinion. And I think when you look at, Dan and Brendan and Griff and Pete and Eugene and myself and Coach Autry and like all our different backgrounds, some of us played, some of us didn't. Some of us have been in the NBA. Some of us have, been All-Americans. Some of us were, managers, water boys, whatever you want to call it. Like everyone has an equal voice and everyone's allowed to kind of share how they feel. And I think that's the beauty of what happens at the NBA, where it's very creative and collaborative and people are always pushing for more and more and more, where I think at times college is, a little stuck in its way. And I think that's what makes some of the great college teams and great up and coming college coaches, that next generation so special is they're willing to take chances. They're willing to experiment. And I think that's the fun part about what we're doing here is there's a lot of experimentation and in all areas, from the coaching side to the performance side to really everything in between. So, Eugene's doing a lot more than we're leading on, but like his ability to, again, communicate effectively and help our program in so many different ways. Like we're very lucky. We hope we can hold on to him for a few years. The NBA is very much going to be calling. But I tell him all the time, like, you got to be present and enjoy what you have here because he does have a voice, and that's pretty rare being, like someone who's, a student assistant, a student manager.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Eugene, one day we talked about, you talk to coaches, you present them with some of your data. What about the players? Do you ever deal directly with the players? And I was wondering, like, which ones are the most receptive?
So yeah, coach gives me a chance to meet with players based on my background through working with guys in the pre-draft process too. So everyone on the team has been pretty receptive so far. Just I think my background with the pre-draft process definitely helps. But yeah, I think
What is your background with the pre-draft? You have to explain that.
yeah, pretty much I worked for Packy Turner and WME through that process. The pre-draft process, I was out there for a while in Santa Barbara when players were done with the college season and just meeting with each guy, showing them analytics stuff, film, and seeing things they can do better. Obviously, creating development plans through the analytics, things like we're doing here now. I think this year we had a pretty successful draft with 6 guys going in the first round and 4 in the lottery. So we got pretty lucky with that process this year.
Alex, the last time you and I talked, one of the things you mentioned was engaging with donors, engaging with the boosters and fans, and in terms of generating some more NIL money, that it would be easier to do that if you were able to show them a plan and show them, your ideas for stuff. Is this what Gene's doing? Is that part of the plan and the stuff that you will end up, showing donors, showing fans, and then perhaps increasing your NIL coffers?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's a great way of stimulating donor engagement, stimulating supporters, just by explaining like, hey, as a business person, you made your money somehow. and it was probably not by accident. So there was probably an equation that led you to having that success in business. And I think business people often appreciate the value of numbers, analytics, having a game plan behind spending your money versus, hey, here's 500,000, go burn it. That's not how we want to do business here. So in the donor meetings that I've had so far, and everyone's been really, really positive, really receptive to it, really open about just, hey, this is different, this is exciting, and seeing where the money's going, us being able to explain, hey, this is why we like this player, this is the reasoning behind it. I don't think it's been done before. Versus, oh yeah, he's ranked this, or he was an All-American, but like that stuff doesn't matter. To the outside world, to Twitter, it probably does. To the rankings, like yes, but at the end of the day, again, like either you can play or you can't, and we have to find ways to back that up in order to again stimulate the donors and excite them, and I think we're showing them that, and I think they're seeing a lot of different modernizations in this program from all areas. And I think it's going to be great in recruiting. I think it's going to be great for the support. But I think it's going to show just, how good a coach and leader, more than anything, Coach Autry is.
Well, this has all been very interesting. I feel like I struggled enough to keep up with you two. But I really appreciate you guys, dropping by, talking to me about some of this, just really new approaches to the game of college basketball and a basketball program. I appreciate both of y'all's time. Alex Kline, Eugene Tulyagijja, 2 for 2. Thank you very much.
Pretty good. That's pretty good, Mike.
This has been a pleasure, guys. Really, I do appreciate it. Thanks for coming by.
I appreciate you having us on.
It's good to be back. Hopefully the viewers don't get sick of seeing me.
Yeah, man, you're about to challenge Buddy Boeheim and Joe Girard for most frequent guest here. So yeah, we're going to have to do something about that. But again, thank you guys both. Thanks to everybody out there listening, and we'll see you next time on the Inside Syracuse Basketball Podcast.
Join us next time for the Inside Syracuse Basketball Podcast, presented by Crouse Health, the exclusive healthcare partner for Syracuse Athletics.